There's a point in life where even a captain no longer needs to lead. A moment when strength isn't loud, but becomes quiet. Thiago Silva reached this point far from trophies, stands, and cameras. Not in Europe, but deep within Brazil. Why does a man who has led the world's biggest clubs choose a life without a stage? What does someone who has achieved everything seek in complete seclusion? And is this peace truly the end? Or just the beginning of another story? Thiago Silva was born on September 22, 1984, in Rio de Janeiro. His football journey didn't begin in grand arenas, but on simple pitches, closely linked to Fluminense. Even as a youth, something special emerged. Not spectacular gestures, but a keen sense for space, timing, and responsibility. At 20, he made a decision that redefined his career. He left his familiar position and moved back into defense, a step that demanded patience, required discipline, and revealed his character. But no sooner had this path formed than the downfall followed. The move to Europe didn't end in a breakthrough, but in the hospital. In Russia, tuberculosis forced him into 6 months of complete isolation. No training, no stadium, just silence and the real possibility that his career, perhaps even his dream, would end there. It was the moment when football became secondary. The return to Fluminense meant more than a fresh start. It was an inner rebuilding. On the pitch, O Monstro emerged, a defender who didn't destroy games, but controlled them. In 2007, he led the team to win the Copa do Brasil, proving that setbacks don't have to mark the end. When Europe knocked again, Thiago Silva was ready. Not as a talent searching for a break, but as a player with history, scars, and newfound clarity. When Thiago Silva returned to Europe, he did so no longer as a beacon of hope. He came as a player who knew what loss meant. At AC Milan, he found the space where experience turned into authority. His presence was calm, almost inconspicuous, yet everything on the pitch organized around him. Mistakes became rarer, decisions clearer. Leadership was palpable without being spoken. In Milan, he wore the captain's armband not as a symbol, but as an obligation. A foreign player who earned trust because he took responsibility when things were toughest. No show, no drama, just control. In 2012, he moved to Paris, into a project that was bigger than any single personality. At Paris Saint-Germain, pressure became a constant state. Titles were mandatory, mistakes not allowed. For years, Thiago Silva maintained this balance. He stabilized when nervousness arose and stood firm when others wavered. For 8 seasons, he was the anchoring point of a dominant but fragile system. The final act unfolded in England. At Chelsea, at 36, he didn't come to wind down his career. He came to create order. During a period of uncertainty, he became the benchmark. Winning the Champions League was no coincidence, but the logical consequence of a player who doesn't fear pressure, but manages it. Thiago Silva's career was never loud. It was consistent, and that was precisely where its strength lay. After decades in the dense rhythm of European football, Thiago Silva made a clear decision. He returned to Brazil, not near cities or centers, but to the interior of the country. There lies his spacious farm, completely secluded, far from noise, appointments, and expectations. The property extends over more than 741 acres. Gentle hills, open pastures, and reforested areas of the Atlantic rainforest define the landscape. Nothing seems designed for attention. Everything is set up for permanence. Even the long, controlled access road changes the rhythm. With every meter, you leave something behind. The residence blends inconspicuously into the terrain. Clean lines, low volumes, light walls, and tiled roofs. No dominance over nature, but belonging. The architecture doesn't seek an effect, it endures, just like the man who lives here. Inside, this idea continues. Generous, functional rooms, connected by a central fireplace that becomes a meeting point. Daylight determines the flow, not the clock. Kitchen and dining area flow into each other. Meals follow no fixed plan. The transition between house and garden is fluid, almost natural. This farm is not a retreat out of weakness. It is a reordering of priorities, a place where discipline doesn't disappear, but takes on a different form. Less pressure, more presence, more control over one's own pace. The interior layout of the house doesn't follow a decorative concept, but a clear logic. Comfort without excess, function without coldness. The main living area is divided into two open spaces, connected by a central fireplace that doesn't serve as a focal point, but as a natural gathering spot for daily life. Natural light determines the rhythm. It flows through the living room, dining area, and the rustic kitchen, where breakfasts and shared meals take place without fixed times. The transition between the indoor space and the garden is constant. Doors remain open. Movement is part of the routine. In addition to the common areas, there are retreats that complement daily life. A game room, an enclosed workspace, and functional service zones integrate without interrupting the flow of the house. Everything remains connected, nothing is isolated. In the private area, 5 suites provide peace and distance. The main suite opens directly to the green surroundings and is equipped with a whirlpool. It serves not for luxury, but for genuine relaxation at the end of the day. The property is complemented by 2 separate guest houses, deliberately placed at a distance to preserve the intimacy of family life. Outdoors, daily life and leisure also blur. The heated pool, open spaces, and natural shaded areas are used without clear separation. Sports are still present, but without performance pressure. A soccer and volleyball field share the space with a tranquil lake and a waterfall, whose steady sound sets the pace. Here, there is no retreat from life, just a different pace. Just as Thiago Silva chose his living space, he also chooses how he moves around. His vehicles are not symbols of status, but tools for everyday life. Each fulfills a clear function, adapted to a specific moment in his life. The Chevrolet Tahoe is used most frequently, not to be seen, but to carry the rhythm of family life. Long distances, flexible times, no time pressure. Stable, spacious, and reliable. A vehicle that doesn't demand, but goes along. Its estimated value is around $60,000. The Nissan GT-R conveys an entirely different feeling. Here it's not about comfort, but about concentration, precise acceleration, immediate reactions, absolute control. Thiago Silva uses it in moments when silence demands focus. Not luxury, but excitement in a controlled form. Its value is approximately $120,000. Between these two poles stands the Range Rover. It combines presence with restraint, powerful yet quiet, elegant without exaggeration. It is used for appointments where one needs to be noticed without being intrusive. The estimated price is about $100,000 and fits a phase of life where everything has found its place. This collection doesn't aim to impress, it accompanies. Like his career, it also follows a principle: function over effect. Over the years, Thiago Silva learned to manage something even more sensitive than games: time and money. His current net worth is estimated at around $45 million. This sum didn't come from a single contract or a sudden breakthrough, but through consistency over more than 2 decades at the highest level. The economic turning point came in 2012. The move from Milan to Paris made him the most expensive defender in the world. From that moment, his career reached a new financial dimension. His annual salary was between $8 and $10 million, not as a promise, but as immediate responsibility within the project. During his time in Paris, earnings grew continuously. Base salaries, title bonuses, performance-based bonuses, and the role as captain provided stability. Over almost 8 seasons, his earnings from contracts and success bonuses totaled more than $70 million. In 2020, another deliberate decision followed. The move to London happened on a free transfer, but the contract secured him around $6 million per season. The Champions League title in the first year brought additional bonus payments. In parallel, he extended his contract, stabilizing his earnings until the end of his European career. Off the pitch, selected endorsement deals and image rights supplemented his income by an additional $2 to $3 million annually. His participation in the Netflix series Captains also strengthened his international profile and opened up new income streams. None of this happened impulsively. Every decision followed the same principle as his career: thinking long-term, controlling risks, and securing stability. Over the years, Thiago Silva began to pass on a part of his journey, not loudly, not visibly, but targeted. In Brazil, he invested around $1 million in educational initiatives for children and youth from disadvantaged backgrounds. Not large-scale campaigns, but long-term support where stability is often lacking. Another focus remained youth sports. Through collaborations with local projects and academies, approximately $50,000 flowed into infrastructure, equipment, and training. For Thiago Silva, sports were never just competition. They were always a means to learn discipline and find stability. This commitment also continued during his time in Europe. Through club foundations, he participated in social programs, events, and community projects. The economic scope of these activities is estimated at around $500,000, not as image cultivation, but as part of his responsibility. Away from public attention, he also supported communities in Brazil with direct aid. Smaller amounts, continuously used to stabilize specific situations. No announcements, no cameras, only impact. His philanthropy followed the same logic as his career: consistency instead of headlines, presence instead of staging, help that endures even when no one is looking. Away from the stadium, Thiago Silva lives with the same order that shaped his career. Family is at the center. His wife was never a sideline figure, but a constant companion through all phases, from rise to crises to maturity. At home, there are no hierarchies, no speeches, only closeness, routines, and time spent together. The images of his current life show no contrast, but continuity. Traveling with the children, days at the beach, simple excursions without staging. Celebrations are not a show, but encounters. Friends, familiar faces, quiet conversations, moments that don't need proof to have meaning. In his free time, he consciously reduces the pace. Individual training to stay active, regeneration phases to respect the body, and when his mind needs a break, video games, not as an escape, but as a mental pause. The competitive spirit has remained, but without pressure, only for joy. This everyday life shows balance. The captain who once led locker rooms today prioritizes presence, listening, accompanying, creating memories without nostalgia, without an abrupt farewell. No break, just a transition into a quieter, more conscious phase. Thiago Silva was never just a captain on the pitch. His path shows that true strength isn't born in noise, but in consistency, clarity, and deliberate decisions. Today, he lives far from the spotlight, not as a retreat, but as a continuation of a life with control. If you want to discover more stories about the lives behind great careers, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and join us in the next videos.